In 1962, Boeing was staring down the barrel of a gun it had loaded itself. The company had bet everything on the 707, and it worked. The jet age arrived. Airlines loved it, passengers loved it. But here was the problem. The 707 could only land at major airports with long runways. That meant a fraction of America's airports were jet-capable. Meanwhile, thousands of smaller airports across America sat empty. No jet service, no future. Airlines were stuck flying piston aircraft and turboprops to places like LaGuardia, Midway, and National. Runways too short, approaches too steep. The jet revolution had arrived, but it had left most of the country behind, and Boeing was bleeding. Boeing's bet on jet aviation had nearly bankrupted the company. The gamble on the Dash 80 prototype before a single airline order pushed finances to the edge. The military contracts that once sustained Boeing were shrinking. Douglas and Lockheed were circling like vultures, ready to steal the short-haul market Boeing couldn't reach. The financial exposure was existential. Without a steady stream of orders across multiple market segments, Boeing's commercial division would collapse. One bad year, one cancelled contract, one recession, that was all it would take. But this wasn't just about survival, it was about domination. Boeing needed an aircraft that could go where the 707 couldn't, an aircraft that could turn tiny airports into jet destinations, an aircraft that would lock airlines into the Boeing family for decades. They needed the 727. To understand why the 727 mattered, you have to understand what flying looked like in 1960. The jet age had two speeds, fast and useless. The 707 was fast. It crossed continents in hours instead of days, but it demanded 8,000 feet of concrete to land safely. That meant New York Idlewild, Los Angeles International, Chicago O'Hare, the giants. But what about Denver's old Stapleton Airport, sitting a mile above sea level, where thin air sapped engine power and stretched takeoff runs? What about Washington National, squeezed between the Potomac and the city, with a runway so short pilots called it a carrier deck? What about the hundreds of regional airports that served the majority of American travelers? Those airports got propellers, slow, loud, uncomfortable. The passengers in Tulsa and Memphis and Buffalo watched jets streak overhead and wondered when their turn would come. Airlines faced an impossible choice: buy jets that could only serve a dozen cities, or keep flying props and watch competitors steal your premium passengers on trunk routes. They needed something in between, not a behemoth like the 707, not a cramped regional prop. Something that could carry 100 passengers in jet comfort and land on runways half the length of what existing jets required. The industry called it the Goldilocks problem. Too big and you couldn't land anywhere useful. Too small and you couldn't make money. Airlines needed something just right. Douglas was working on the DC-9, a small twin jet for short hops. Lockheed was fumbling around with concepts that went nowhere. The British had the Trident, but it was designed for European distances and British budgets. None of them solved the American problem. Boeing saw the gap, and Boeing decided to fill it. The question was how. Here is where the 727 becomes fascinating. Boeing didn't just build a smaller jet, they built a flying Swiss Army knife. The first decision was engines. How many? Twins were cheaper to operate, but regulators didn't trust them over water or remote terrain. The rules were brutal. Lose one engine on a twin, and you'd better be close to an airport. That eliminated half the routes airlines wanted to fly. 4 engines meant redundancy, but also weight, complexity, and fuel burn. The 707 already had 4. Building another quadjet would just create an expensive little brother that competed with the parent. 3 engines, that was the answer. A trijet gave airlines the redundancy they needed for over-water routes and remote destinations. It satisfied the regulators who didn't trust twins, but it burned less fuel than a 4-engine design and weighed considerably less. The configuration was radical. 2 engines hung on pylons at the rear of the fuselage. The third buried in the tail, fed by an S-shaped duct that curved air from an inlet at the base of the vertical stabilizer into the engine buried deep inside. That S-duct was a masterpiece of aerodynamic compromise. It let Boeing mount the center engine high and out of the way, keeping the tail clean and the thrust line symmetrical. But it also created drag and complexity that engineers spent years optimizing. Why put the engines in the back at all? Because the wing had a job to do, and that job was getting the 727 into airports that had no business handling jets. The wing was the 727's secret weapon. Boeing designed it with an array of high lift devices that seemed almost excessive. Triple slotted flaps that extended from the trailing edge, increasing the wing's effective area by nearly 25%. Leading edge slats that deployed during slow flight, preventing the wing from stalling at steep angles of attack. When fully configured for landing, the 727's wing transformed. What looked like a sleek jet became a massive lift-generating machine. Approach speeds dropped to levels remarkable for a jet of its size, far below what other jets required, allowing it to operate at airports previously limited to turboprops. This wasn't just incremental improvement. This was a paradigm shift. And then there was the airstair. Boeing built a ventral airstair into the 727's tail. Passengers could board directly from the tarmac without jetways or ground equipment. Airlines could turn the aircraft at airports that had nothing but a fuel truck and a baggage cart. This sounds mundane now. In 1963, it was revolutionary. The 727 could operate at airports that had no infrastructure, no jetways, no ground power units, no specialized equipment. Suddenly, jet service wasn't limited to cities that could afford million-dollar terminal upgrades. Any airport with a runway long enough became a potential destination. The 727 didn't just fly to small airports, it democratized the jet age. But none of this mattered if Boeing couldn't sell it. The sales campaign for the 727 was a masterclass in strategic positioning. Boeing didn't just pitch an aircraft, they pitched a future. Eastern and United Airlines signed as launch customers together, 40 aircraft each. The dual orders validated the concept and proved that major carriers believed in the 727's promise. Then American, then TWA. The dominoes fell fast. By the time the 727 entered service in February 1964, Boeing had orders that would keep the production line running for years. This wasn't a tentative experiment. This was a commercial avalanche. The timing was perfect. Airlines were desperate to retire aging propeller fleets, but couldn't justify 707 economics on medium-haul routes. The 727 slotted into their networks like a missing puzzle piece. Routes that had never seen jet service suddenly had it. LaGuardia to Chicago, Dallas to Denver, Atlanta to Miami. The 727 connected cities that had been isolated from the jet revolution. Passenger traffic exploded. When you could fly jet service to 100 new destinations, people flew more. The 727 didn't just serve existing demand, it created demand that hadn't existed before. But here's the problem with building revolutionary aircraft. Sometimes the revolution encounters turbulence. The 727's development was not without crisis. Boeing was simultaneously managing the 707 production line, developing military projects, and pouring resources into the 727 program. Cash was tight, margins were razor thin. The weight grew during development. As engineers added systems and strengthened structures, the aircraft got heavier. Heavier meant higher fuel burn. Higher fuel burn meant airlines might not achieve the operating economics Boeing had promised. Engineering teams worked around the clock to shave pounds from every system. Lighter materials where possible, redesigned components, endless optimization. The final aircraft met its weight targets, but barely. Then there were the aerodynamics. That S-duct feeding the center engine created pressure losses that reduced thrust. Engineers spent months refining the inlet geometry to minimize drag while maintaining engine performance across all flight conditions. The triple-slotted flap system was mechanically complex. More moving parts meant more maintenance. Airlines worried about reliability. Boeing had to prove the system could handle the punishment of daily service without constant repairs. And the market itself was uncertain. Would passengers trust a trijet configuration they had never seen? Would pilots adapt to the unique handling characteristics? Would airports actually welcome jet service when it meant noise complaints from surrounding communities? Boeing bet the answer was yes, they were right. Let's talk about what the 727 proved in service. The aircraft entered regular operations with Eastern Airlines in February 1964. Within months, it was clear Boeing had built something special. Pilots reported handling characteristics that were precise and predictable. The flight control systems gave them confidence during the challenging approaches the aircraft was designed to perform. Airlines discovered they could schedule the 727 more aggressively than any previous jet. Quick turns at small airports, multiple daily flights on routes that previously supported one or two. The aircraft's versatility translated directly into revenue. The numbers tell the story. By 1965, over 200 727s were in service. By 1970, that number exceeded 700. Airlines on every continent were flying them, but the real proof came when things went wrong. 727s demonstrated structural resilience in emergency situations, including multiple controlled descents following decompression events, testament to Boeing's engineering philosophy of redundancy and strength. Boeing's engineering philosophy was vindicated. Build it strong, build it redundant, build it to survive the worst day. The 727 wasn't just efficient, it was tough. Now here's where the story gets interesting. The 727 had a sibling, and that sibling almost killed the program. Boeing developed the 727-100 as the original model. It seated between 94 and 131 passengers depending on configuration. Airlines loved it for medium-range routes, but the market wanted more capacity. Boeing responded with the 727-200, a stretched version with a fuselage extended by 20 feet. Passenger capacity jumped to 189 in high-density configurations. The -200 was the 727 that broke records. It became the best-selling variant by far. Airlines that had ordered the -100 often wished they had waited, but there was a variant that never found its audience. The 727-100C was designed as a convertible freighter. Passenger seats could be removed and cargo loaded through a large side door. The idea was flexibility. Airlines could fly passengers during the day and freight at night. The market didn't bite. Convertible aircraft require compromises in both roles. They're heavier than pure passenger jets and less efficient than purpose-built freighters. Airlines that wanted cargo capacity bought dedicated freighters. Airlines that wanted passengers bought standard 727s. The -100C sold in smaller numbers than the passenger variants. The convertible concept found a niche but never dominated the order book. Then there was the competition. Douglas brought the DC-9 into service in 1965, a twin-engine design aimed at the same short-haul market. The DC-9 was smaller and cheaper to operate on thin routes. It posed a direct threat to 727 economics on shorter segments. Boeing's response was the 737, announced in 1965 and entering service in 1968. The 737 was Boeing's twin-jet answer to Douglas, smaller than the 727, lower operating costs, perfect for routes that couldn't fill a trijet. Here's the nuance. The 737 didn't kill the 727, it complemented it. Airlines bought both. 737s for short, thin routes, 727s for longer, denser routes. Boeing captured the entire short to medium haul market with two aircraft families. But the 737 also began eating into 727 territory. As twin-engine reliability improved, regulators relaxed the rules that had made trijets essential. Suddenly, twins could fly routes that once demanded 3 engines. The 727's competitive advantage was eroding, not because the aircraft failed, but because technology advanced. By the late 1970s, the trijet era was ending. The 727 remained in production until 1984. 1,832 aircraft delivered. At the time, it was the best-selling commercial jet in history. That production run did something remarkable for Boeing. It generated 2 decades of steady revenue, predictable cash flows, factory utilization that kept suppliers healthy and workers employed. The 727 wasn't a single hit, it was a franchise. And that franchise bought Boeing something invaluable: time. The cash from 727 sales funded development of the 747. That program nearly destroyed Boeing. The costs were staggering, the risks were existential. But Boeing survived because the 727 kept generating revenue while the jumbo jet program consumed billions. Without the 727, there is no 747. Without the 747, Boeing doesn't dominate the wide-body market. Without wide-body dominance, Boeing doesn't become the world's largest aircraft manufacturer. The 727 wasn't just a successful aircraft, it was the foundation for everything that followed. Think about what the 727 actually accomplished. Before 1964, jet service was a luxury reserved for major cities. After the 727, jets flew everywhere. Regional airports became connected to the national network. Business travelers could fly jets to markets that had been accessible only by turboprop. The 727 changed how America thought about air travel. It made jets normal, expected, routine. The aircraft democratized speed in a way that reshaped business and tourism and family connections across the continent. Airlines that bought 727s stayed loyal to Boeing for decades. The relationships forged during those early sales led to 737 orders and 747 orders and 757 orders. Boeing didn't just sell aircraft, they sold ecosystems. And the 727's influence extended beyond Boeing. The trijet configuration inspired competitors, the DC-10, the L-10-11, the Trident. All were responses to what Boeing proved was possible. The aircraft also taught lessons that still matter. Match the aircraft to the market. Don't build what you think airlines should want. Build what they actually need. Listen to operators. Design for the real world, not the theoretical one. Today, the 727 is essentially retired from passenger service. A few freighter conversions still fly cargo in remote corners of the world, but the passengers have moved on to 737s and A320s and newer, more efficient aircraft. Yet every time a narrow-body jet lands at a regional airport with a runway under 7,000 feet, the 727's legacy is present. Boeing proved it could be done. Everyone else followed. The 727 didn't save Boeing from bankruptcy through some dramatic last-minute rescue. It saved Boeing through something more powerful: sustained success, 2 decades of orders, reliable production, steady cash, the foundation that let Boeing take the risks that built an empire. That's not luck, that's engineering, that's strategy, that's execution. And somewhere in a maintenance hangar or a desert boneyard or a cargo operation in Alaska, a 727 still waits. Fuselage faded, engines quiet, but the aircraft that changed everything remains. A monument to the moment Boeing bet on small airports and won the world.